Hello friends, and welcome to Limitless Life. My name is Larry Hutton and I'm your host. We're going to have a great week this time. In fact, I am going to take a week off of the series that we've been teaching. If you've been watching our series, I'm going to take a week off and I'm going to spend this week, since this week is Thanksgiving week, then I'm going to take this week and just talk about Thanksgiving, about the holiday, different things, but it's a special time. I remember back when I worked for Delta Airlines for a number of years, I worked for Delta, and once I got seniority with Delta and could get time off, when you couldn't get Christmas or Thanksgiving off when you were a rookie, but after a while then I had enough seniority where I could take time off, and I always remember wanting the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of Thanksgiving offs because I knew I had Thursday and Friday paid holidays anyway, right? So that way I had 9 days of vacation time, and I still notice a lot of people do that now each year. And so this week we're going to spend all 5 days talking about Thanksgiving, both from the natural standpoint, but also from God's standpoint. From the natural standpoint, I'm going to discuss some of the history of Thanksgiving. It's very apropos to us giving thanks to God when you study the history of Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about some of the traditions of Thanksgiving and how gratitude or giving thanks is what Thanksgiving is all about. It not only helps you personally, which you're going to find out, it substantially helps your life when you learn how to give thanks, but it also strengthens others. And we as Christians, that's what we are all about. When God said, "Let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and they glorify your Father in heaven," that's what true Christianity is all about, is being a blessing to others. Remember, God told Abraham, "I'm going to bless you, going to make your name great, and you're going to be a blessing." I call it the threefold blessing of Abraham. I'm going to bless you, which is going to give you more influence into more people's lives, which is what he meant by your name becoming great. In other words, you becoming more known so that you have more influence. So I'm going to bless you, make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. So it was all about being a blessing. Praise God. So gratitude does help you, and you'll find out as we get into this whole week that it helps you immensely, but it strengthens others as well. Somebody once said this: thankfulness is like a big muscle. The more you exercise it, the bigger your thankfulness muscle grows. So look at thankfulness as a muscle, man. Exercise thankfulness. And that really is true when you think about it. The more you exercise, we could say exercise in the practice of giving thanks to God and people, not just to people, but to God and people. The more you exercise in the practice of giving thanks, the more you notice more things to be thankful for. That's one thing I've noticed as I've learned and trained myself to give thanks to my wife and to people, and of course regularly to God. Then I notice the more you're giving thanks, then the more you notice more things to give thanks for. So let's start today talking about the history of Thanksgiving. I know last year I waited till Thanksgiving Day to give some history, but I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to start today so that we can all look forward to that day of Thanksgiving with family, friends, whoever we're celebrating with. So let's talk about the history of Thanksgiving. The actual day of Thanksgiving and the observance of Thanksgiving as a holiday has become really dear to a lot of people. I've noticed it's dear not just to Christians, although it really is a Christian holiday, but it's dear to a lot of Christians. Many people like the tradition of gathering family and friends together on Thanksgiving Day, and then they enjoy food together. They enjoy playing games together. They enjoy reminiscing. I know when we've sat around with family and all of a sudden you find yourself reminiscing, we just appreciate, even if people aren't Christians, but again, we're going to be specifically dealing with Christians here. We appreciate each other's company, which is good, because God says, "Don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together." So We're going to talk about Thanksgiving. The tradition of Thanksgiving actually began over 400 years ago in September of 1620. There were 102 passengers plus a crew of about 30 that set sail from a port called Plymouth on the southern coast of England. The passengers, these 102 passengers, consisted of 74 males. I was going to say men, but it considered children. It included children and adults. So 74 males and 28 females. That again included women and children. I think there were actually nine children and 19 adult women. So these 102 pilgrims, they uprooted themselves. They eventually sailed across the Atlantic on a ship. If you've studied history, you know it was called the Mayflower. Some of the 102 passengers were non-Christians. A number of them were Christians. The Christians, seeking religious freedom. But the non-Christians, they just wanted a new way of living for their families, which they didn't realize it was freedom that God gives us. But when I started reading about the history and what the settlers actually endured, I started thinking, man, this is even amazing that we even have Thanksgiving, that we can even celebrate, that it even ever came about. Because only out of the 102, only 53 of those original sailors, including, crew, but only 103 or 53 out of the 102 passengers survived the first winter, and even half of the crew died. So as the old saying goes, it was tough sailing. I'm not saying that as a pun, it was tough sailing. But it wasn't just the sailing. First of all, instead of the Mayflower landing in Virginia, which is where they intended to land, the Mayflower was blown off course and landed in Cape Cod Bay at Plymouth, Massachusetts. And little did those sailors know what they were about to experience. Wow. What happened to them that first winter was absolutely terrible. You would have thought that it would have broken the will of even the strongest of those settlers because they got hit by a terrible winter storm. Besides not one winter storm, numerous winter storms. And then besides that, they were ravaged with sickness, all kinds of sickness and disease. In fact, I was reading what the first governor, William Bradford, he was the first governor of the Plymouth colony, and he wrote this. This is what he wrote. He said, what was most sad and lamentable was that in 2 or 3 months, half of the company had died. So if you put yourself in their shoes, these people that we're going to be thankful that we have Thanksgiving, that we owe our Thanksgiving to, think about that, 2 or 3 months, and you've watched some of your family members and some of your friends. I mean, you became friends even on the long trip across the Atlantic with people you didn't know when you started the trip. By the time you got to America, which it wasn't named America yet, but by the time you got to America, man, you had lost friends, you had lost loved ones, family. That was tough. And then for the ones you didn't over that winter, and then diseases and stuff, and you lose all these people, it wasn't any fun. So, in fact, I read this. Somebody made this observation in history when I was reading about it. It said history records that the settlers spent 7 times or spent their time digging 7 times more graves for the dead than they did homes for the living. Whoa. And then to make matters worse, the settlers, their first ship that arrived from England that was supposed to have food and provision and supplies for them had no food and no supplies at all. There were 35 more people on the ship that came, but because of the long, grueling trip, they had used all the supplies, used all the food, so there was nothing on this supposed provision ship except 35 more people. In other words, 35 more mouths to feed and 35 more people to care for, that some were sick. I mean, it's amazing that the tradition of Thanksgiving ever even came about. But I believe the Holy Spirit helped the survivors. I believe that they persevered by the Spirit of God's help. One of the survivors, who was a Christian, if you read history, was the name of Edward Winslow. He actually was referred to as a Puritan or a separatist, but he was a God-fearing man. And he became one of the leaders of the Christians in the Plymouth colony. And if you remember, he was also one of the signers of the Mayflower, which was the very first document to establish self-government in the New World. Winslow wrote an article about the first Thanksgiving. He said this, he said there were 90 Native Americans present and about 53 pilgrims who were the survivors of the Mayflower. And for those of you who might, I'm an inquiring mind, you say 90 Native Americans. Who were those Native Americans? Who were they? What tribe were they from? Well, it was the Wampanoag tribe. I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but I think it's correct. Wampanoag tribe, their name, Wampanoag, meant people of first light. And by the way, if you ever meet a Wampanoag, they don't like to be called Indians. They like to be called Native people. According to some historical reports, and this might explain why, is because their existence here in this country extended to 15,000 years ago. So they inhabited the coastline, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, as well as some of the islands offshore that we now call Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. But they actually, when they were here for supposedly 15,000 years, according to history, they actually called this land, and it wasn't called America yet, they called it Turtles Island. Turtles Island. I remember growing up in Florida, how that I grew up, I saw turtles, all kinds of turtles, but I saw turtles all the time growing up in Florida. So I could see how they could call it Turtle Island, because all up the coast and everywhere, we didn't just have like what we called water turtles and snapping turtles, but we had what we called gophers. They were land turtles, and we called them gophers. They got really big, and they would dig these huge holes. You'd have to be careful, because if you were out running in a field, you could break a leg by stepping into one of their holes. So you'd have to be careful. But these gophers, turtles, I just made me think when I saw that our land was originally by the natives called Turtle Island. And the reason I'm giving you a little part of the Wampanoag history is because there was more of them at the original Thanksgiving than there were settlers. So we do owe them thanks for the tradition of Thanksgiving as well. In fact, when I was reading about that first winter, if it had not been for the Wampanoag tribe helping the settlers during that winter, they gave them food, they gave them clothing, there would have even been more of the settlers that had died. So thank you. If there are any Native Americans of even the Wampanoag tribe or other tribes that helped settlers, then thank you. Unfortunately, the sad part about the camaraderie between the Wampanoag tribe and the settlers is that it didn't last long. It wasn't but a few years later, I don't remember exactly how many years later, but a few years later, colonial soldiers slaughtered, I think it was over 700 men, women, and children of the Wampanoag tribe. So history does shed some dark years upon our Thanksgiving holiday. Thank God that we're beyond that now. However, the origin, that's what we want to talk about, because we're giving thanks to God, is what Thanksgiving's all about. And the Thanksgiving holiday was actually instituted or began during that time to give God thanks for His provision. In fact, it was actually called, before it was ever called Thanksgiving, it was called the Harvest Festival. The Wampanoags and the settlers together, when they celebrated that first Thanksgiving, they were giving God thanks that God had provided enough food for them to survive. And so it's kind of really cool that you have people of different cultures and different skin color and so forth, and they've come together and they're thanking God together. That's the way we should be, especially as Christians, right? When we're told in Matthew 5, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. So you take all of those people and then all the ones you love, that should include the whole human race, for God so loved the world, right? So in the 1600s, when our first Thanksgiving started, they started giving God thanks right away. Thank you for provision, Lord. You are our provider. Now you move from 1620 to over a century later in 1789, George Washington, our first president, proclaimed Thanksgiving as a holiday that should be celebrated nationally. So I thought that was cool. So now we've got our first president saying we need to be celebrating this nationally. Then if you move about 74 years later, Abraham Lincoln, who was our 16th president, he actually made Thanksgiving a federal holiday. And that was in 1863. During the Civil War, by the way, he made it a federal holiday. Then, moving 79 years later, is when Congress actually made Thanksgiving Day the fourth Thursday of November, so that it would be established every November of every year, the fourth Thursday. That's when Thanksgiving would be. I like what I was reading some quotes of Abraham Lincoln, and he made this statement about Thanksgiving, and I'm going to paraphrase it. Pretty close to what he said, but in essence he said this: Thanksgiving is to be a day that our nation gives praise and thanksgiving to our Father in heaven, because He is always good and generous to us. I like that. Thanksgiving is a day that our nation gives praise and thanksgiving to our Father in heaven, because He's always good and generous to us. Wow. So, giving thanks to God is the very essence of what Thanksgiving is all about. Listen, if you and I are really thankful, what do? You give thanks. You share your gratitude with God and with people when you're a thankful person. Someone once said that feeling gratitude, listen to this statement, feeling gratitude and expressing it and not expressing it, that's what it was. Feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. Yeah, that'd be kind of silly, wouldn't it, to wrap a present and not give it? Well, feeling gratitude, not expressing it is the same way. So the truth is, we can always find something to be thankful for. And there's something powerful, and you'll be seeing that as we get into the scriptures and stuff tomorrow and the rest of the week. It's really powerful when you learn what being thankful creates and what it does in your life. Giving thanks, you'll find out, is the language of faith that releases all the blessings of God's grace in your life. I'm going to say that again. Giving thanks is the language of faith that releases all the blessings of God's grace in your life. Wow. I mean, giving thanks will turn what you have into more than enough. Giving thanks will turn denial into acceptance. Giving thanks will turn chaos into harmony. Giving thanks will turn confusion into clarity. Giving thanks can turn a stranger into a friend. I'm sure that happened for the ones before they ever had the division between the Wampanoags. I'm sure that giving thanks, just some of those pilgrims just said, "You're our friends." Giving thanks can turn a house into a home. Giving thanks can turn a meal into a feast. Being thankful makes our problems small and our God bigger. It makes us optimistic instead of pessimistic. But I'm not just talking about seeing the glass as half full, but I'm saying being thankful that you have a glass at all, that you have a glass to fill. Thanksgiving helps us to see the rose and not the thorn. It helps us to see the provision and not the lack. It helps us to see the rainbow, not the clouds. Thanksgiving can take the charred remnants of the past and reconstruct a life that is unimaginably richer than ever before. Thanksgiving makes us appreciate what we have, not what we don't. You know, if someone is not thankful for what they have, then they're not likely to be thankful for what they get. Thanksgiving makes us count our blessings, and that's what makes our blessings count. I believe it was Henry David Thoreau that said, "I'm thankful for what I am and what I have. My thanksgiving is perpetual." I like that. Thanksgiving helps us appreciate our past. It brings peace into our present. It creates a wonderful expectancy for the future. Think about what we're really doing when we're giving God thanks. We are acknowledging our dependence on Him. Wow. You, God, are our source. Thank you. But giving thanks is more than just words. It's really, it's a life that lives the gratitude, lives the thankful. Because kindness is displayed when you're a thankful person. It's displayed in your demeanor. I tell people you should wear kindness like clothes. It's always fashionable. The world has a saying, "Your actions are speaking so loudly I can't hear what you're saying." Well, with us Christians, it should be this: your actions speak so loudly that I believe everything you're saying. Right? That's really good. I read this quote, "To speak gratitude is courteous and pleasant. To enact gratitude is generous and noble. But to live gratitude is to touch heaven." So I encourage every one of us during this Thanksgiving holiday week to be thankful. And like David Thoreau said, let it be perpetual. Let it be ongoing. Find something to be thankful for every day, not just on Thanksgiving Day. Find something to be thankful for. So the rest of this week, we're going to be talking about Thanksgiving from the Word of God. If we're going to give thanks, then the Word of God has to be the foundation of everything if we want to walk in the blessings of heaven. I'm going to start tomorrow. In fact, I'll go ahead and read it real quick today, but if you'll turn in your Bibles to Colossians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7, this is the essence of thanksgiving and the power of thanksgiving. Colossians 2, 6 and 7, "As you have therefore received Christ, so walk in Him, rooted and built up in Him, and established in the faith as you have been taught, abounding in it with what? With thanksgiving." So notice how it closes, abounding in it, what we're talking about in verses 6 and 7, which we'll get into detail tomorrow. As you have received Christ, then walk in Him, rooted, built up, established, the way you've been taught, abounding in your faith with thanksgiving. So don't let this week go by without giving thanks. You know, we have to go get the turkey and go buy the stuffing, and boy, do we look forward to that. I don't know about you, but I look forward to Thanksgiving Thanksgiving Day. I have friends that celebrate Thanksgiving, make it Thanksgiving week instead of just a day. And so they have special food and family and friends over all 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday. And they celebrate and they give God thanks and they enjoy each other's company and they have great meals. Well, I'll tell you what, the way I enjoy Thanksgiving meal on Thursday. On that Thursday, I would love to have it every day, but then it's probably good that I don't because I think I gained plenty of weight on that one day eating all the food that I eat. All right, so we're going to continue to celebrate Thanksgiving all of this week. I appreciate you joining us, and I want to be thankful, and I always am. I thank you partners that are part of the power team, the partner power team, that are helping us reach so many people. So those of you that are partners, you continually support us every month. Some of you more than once a month you support us. I just thank you for that and appreciate you believing in us and helping us to reach all the other people that are getting to watch also. We know the gospel is free, but it's not free to get it out. So thank you for helping us get this gospel out to the multitudes around the world. Appreciate you, love you. Make sure you share these messages on social media with other people. Until next program, we love you. We call you blessed. Have a wonderful, Jesus-filled Thanksgiving week.
If you would like to schedule Larry Hutton to speak at your church, event, or conference, go to larryhutton.org and choose Contact Us from the menu bar or call 1-888-887-WORD. God intends for believers to be able to apply His Word to their daily lives and get good results, living the joyful, loving, and abundant life that Jesus has provided for us. Believers are supposed to understand the Bible and be able to enjoy the blessings of heaven while we are here on the earth. But many believers, at the beginning of their new life in Jesus, did not learn the most basic foundational truths of the Bible that will carry them over all of the traps and pitfalls and on into victorious, limitless life in Christ. In this new book, Dr. Hutton addresses all the issues that every Christian must come to know, understand, and establish as true in order to lead a limitless life in Jesus. To order your copy of Limitless Life with Jesus, go to larryhutton.org or call 888-887-WORD. Join us again for Limitless Life with Dr. Larry Hutton, where you'll get practical teaching from God's Word that you can apply to your everyday life. Go to larryhutton.org to watch this program and many others. You'll find special offers and resources to help you thrive in life. You can check on Larry and Liz's schedule and join them at a meeting near you. That's larryhutton.org, or you can call 888-887-WORD.